mentally, you could no longer even conceive of it as being divisible. Okay, you get so small mentally that as you try to imagine splitting it, you get to a point where you just couldn't imagine splitting it further. That's what partless means to them. Partless means to them inconceivable part. Partless in the sense of no longer being able to reduce it further mentally. Okay, then you've reached, conceptually, a tiniest particle. That even mentally you could no longer think of it as having two parts.
So inconceivably small.
Yeah, something like that. Some give me kyabe chua so she lamnan garment. Yeah, pretty much like that. Yeah. Also, if you get it into thinking of it in spatial terms, simply spatial terms, you're going to be into another problem, which is that when they say indivisible, they're also talking indivisible time-wise, okay, by millisecond, millisecond, that this is a particle about which you could not say first millisecond, second millisecond, third millisecond. It gets so fine and divided mentally so far down, reduced so far down, that you could no longer even conceive of it as happening in a progression of time. It would not have a first second to it and a second second to it and a third second to it. It's indivisible also in that sense, not just spatially, but temporally indivisible particle. Okay, so you get in trouble if you call it side, as I called it. Okay, you have to kind of call it partless. Okay, so we better stick to partless. Okay. The word part can have a lot of different meanings. Part can have global meanings. You can say this, something has a part in India but doesn't have a part in the United States, or it does have a part in the United States but doesn't have a part in India. I mean, the word part is pretty big. The word part can have a lot of different meanings. It can have global implications. We have a part of this in the United States, but we don't have a part in India of this. You see, something like that. It can be global also. The word part is very tricky. The idea to conceptualize smallest particles when you're a student of Buddhism and you're thinking about what it means in the first two schools for something to be partless, it helps. It's useful for you to think temporally also, because it brings you to a greater appreciation of really how radical this idea is of something that is partless. Okay. Nothing. Now remember that in the lower two schools they are describing something as existing as an external object, right? External object. When it is composed of these partless atoms, okay? When it is composed of partless atoms. Now the MindOnly school comes along to them and says, this is really dumb. You guys are sitting there, how could you take something that was partless and build up all these physical things from that? How can you get hunks of stuff composed of something that is partless? That's totally impossible. That's totally out of the bounds of reason. That's crazy. And in thereby saying they refute the existence of external objects. Okay? By saying that's what they say when they say that's what they say when they are refuting the existence of objects which are external to yourself. They have just done that when they say, come on, that's crazy. You couldn't build stuff out of that. Now let's consider again, who is it that would say to the lower two schools, this is a crazy idea, making things out of things that don't have any parts, Who among the four schools would say to the lower schools, that's a dumb idea? Actually, everybody above would say that, okay? Not just the MindOnly school, but everybody in the Madhyamika school too. Okay. He says basically everybody above would say to them, that's a really stupid idea, I mean, it's not just the MindOnly school that would say that's a dumb idea or that that's wrong. Everybody above them on the ladder would say that was wrong. Then I made the same objection arise in my mind. I said, well, what about the subgroup of the independent group in the middle way school that sides with the sutras? Would they say that the sutras are crazy? He says, they do verbally, in their words, they do say, we do believe that things exist as external objects, as objects external to ourselves, but they don't at all mean what the sutras mean when they say that. Okay, therefore we can include them in that group that say, you're crazy when you say that. Okay. So if these normal sutras come up to the independent Madhyamika group, sutra tending guys subgroup, and say, well, didn't you say that you also agreed that things that exist external to ourselves? And they said, yeah, we did agree that. But, well, what did you mean then when you said that if now you're saying that we're crazy, And they say, what we meant was that things are, chunks of stuff can be made from piling together atomic particles which are partless only in the sense of having no identifiable directions. Only in that sense. We didn't say partless in the way that you mean part. We don't mean that at all. We don't agree to that at all. What we mean when we say partless is partless in the sense of having no identifiable directions up, down, north, south, east, west, like that. Okay. So you better be sensitive to the difference between now 3 different interpretations of what it is to exist as external, right? We got one version according to the Madhyamika Prasangika. They had one idea of what it meant to exist as an external thing. When they said things do exist externally, that's what they meant. Then we had another interpretation by the subgroup of those people in the independent group of Madhyamikas who tend towards the sutrist approach, and they had a different meaning when they said that things do exist externally. And then when the lower two schools said they assert that things exist externally, they had yet a different interpretation of what that meant. So although in word only, verbally, all 3 of them are using the same phrase, things do exist externally. What they mean is entirely different. 3 different guys are going down 3 different roads, aren't they? Killing money. So one little thing left to wrap up here and then we're done, okay? What is it that the MindOnly school guys are saying when they say external objects don't exist? And what is it when that subgroup of the independent group of the Madhyamika school says, we side with them, we agree with them? What do these two groups mean when they say things don't exist as external objects? What they mean to say is, they deny, they say the following, if external objects did exist, they would have to be just in the way that the detailists and the sutras describe external objects. And since that's impossible, we don't agree that there could be external objects. Okay? So again, to repeat it, these two guys mean the whole mind-only school and the subgroup of the guys who tend towards the mind-only school, who are part of the independent group among the middle way school. They both say that if external objects existed, they would have to exist as external objects in the way described by the lower two schools. And since that's impossible, we deny the existence of external objects. One more minor point to wrap up. Therefore, you'd have to say that the Madhyamika Prasangika, right, and the sutras tending subgroup in the independent group within the middle way school would both have to say the following. Okay, when we say external objects do exist, we don't agree that we have to be saying it in the way the lower two schools are saying it. You guys think that. You guys think that if somebody said external objects existed, they'd have to be agreeing to the way that word is that phrase is explained by the lower two schools. That's not right. Okay, we say external objects do exist, and we don't believe in external objects in the way that they believe external objects exist. So when you guys insist that if somebody agreed to external objects, they'd have to agree to external objects in the way that the lower two schools describe them, you're wrong. Because we believe in external objects, and we don't believe in the way that they describe them. Okay, that's all. So in the future, if Christy and Winston got into debate about external objects, they would first have to each identify what school they were speaking on behalf of. They say, I'm going to be a Madhyamika Prasangika today. No, I'm going to be a Vaibhashika today. No, I'm going to be a Sutras today. You'd have to decide which way. First, you'd have to decide which school you're in. Each person. Today we'll finish there. Because of the shira gyuni muktsure, na long kashi chinso. The bag out here, the bag out here. Then they say, "Tell
him we were actually debating what this was."
Chiro dundu drupa duku dunam and dunat so dimanes. Chiro doing drupa say the Karina say the That's why I started out saying external objects are external objects. Piece of bread is a piece of bread, isn't it? Pergi jashimetam Rirabling ninde gambani Sangye shindu medewagi Dogunanda shina jabashu Idam guru rana mandala kamnaya dayami Di gyawokun sanam yeshe totoshin Sanam yeshe nechuwe Tamba kunyi tobasho This guy's losing his head a little bit, okay? Be careful, because it looks like there's some kind of contact.